What is happening, superfans? You're listening to Behind the Mask, the show where we chat with your favorite superhero fiction authors about the worlds and the heroes that they are writing. Behind the Mask is brought to you by the amazing folks over at superherofiction.com. I am your host, Franklin Kendrick, and today on the show, I am excited to be chatting with author Cynthia Vespia. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Where are you located?
I am in Sin City, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada.
It's like the opposite end of the world from me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. I'm over in like the really frigid New England, Maine.
That's nice, though. I've always wanted to go out there. I don't think I would be last with my thin blood, but, it'd be nice to see one.
Yeah. Today was just like the first day that it was really cold. So I'm like thankful that I have all of my winter stuff ready to go.
I don't even know what winter stuff is. I don't even have a heavy jacket.
All right. I'm jealous of that. So let me start off with my first question that I always ask, which is, when you're not behind the keyboard writing superhero fiction or any other genres, what is your secret identity out in the real world?
Out in the real world, I'm a writer. I do freelance health and fitness. I've done content marketing writing. I've been doing that for years upon years. But I was also a personal trainer for 12 years and a fitness competitor. So that's my other life.
Oh, wow. So I say, has that influenced any of your superhero characters at all?
It has. I often draw from my experiences, especially through the training process of what I went through for my competitions. It actually relates to writing like quite a bit. So I go back into my memories and draw from that. Plus, I felt like a superhero at the time. So.
I'm imagining like a really awesome like training montage happening in like your stories.
Yes, I have that. Not necessarily in my superhero book, but I did do that in my Demon Hunter novel, and it was drawn directly from doing an obstacle course event. So.
That sounds awesome. So, all right, I'll be looking up this time for anybody watching because I am in the comfort of my home office right now. So I'm trying a new setup where I have my questions above, everything else down below, so I'm not like peering around windows. So like if I'm looking up, that's why I'm looking up. So just if anybody is like curious. But let me ask, so what got you into writing, first of all, in your writing journey? And then what sort of steered you towards wanting to write in the superhero genre?
So I used to read a lot as a kid, and I guess that just naturally gravitated into wanting to be an author. I used to like do the one finger on the typewriter in my sister's room and do like these little weird short stories. And then when I was in high school, I actually started getting into more like supernatural fantasy and stuff like that. Author named Dean Koontz really inspired me to start writing like full time, trying to chase this dream. But as for the superheroes, I've always been fascinated with the superhero stories. The Punisher was actually one of my favorite comics. I mean, he doesn't really have superpowers, but still, in the comic vein, I just really loved like the storytelling. And so as they started to get like really popular in the mainstream with the movies and so forth, I decided I wanted to make my own. So I had a story idea that I was working on. And I sort of said, well, what if I added like superpower elements to this and made it more like superhero fantasy instead of, it was going to be like a little bit more contemporary, but I changed it around and here we are 4 books later.
And that's how it always begins. I feel like it's like, I'll do 1 book. We'll see how it goes. And it always just like sucks you in and you're like, I can't stop with just 1. Like, got to do more.
Got to stick with those characters.
Oh yes, and I also like the movies. The movies is like a gateway for, and even for myself when like I knew of the characters when I was younger, and they're just like part of pop culture. Even back then, that was like 15 years ago. But it's like it's hard to remember a time before the movies or like even like the cheesy movies from like the 80s. But it's like those are such a gateway. Like there's so much more, and it's always evolving. So I'm always happy when it's like, yeah, it was like a good jumping off point, and then you just dive right in, and it's like, of course I'm gonna try it myself. Like, why wouldn't you?
Of course. I mean, hey, I remember when Michael Keaton and Tim Burton's Batman came out, and like we hadn't seen anything like that at all. And then
Oh
now
yeah.
here we are so many years later, and Marvel just announced their new lineup. We just saw the DC Wonder Woman online premiere yesterday. I'm representing with the hat, so it's like it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's like there's a wealth of things to draw from in that vein, and like people gravitate towards the superhero stories because they're so empowering in so many different ways. Because there's a lot of different characters that they relate to every aspect of different parts of people's lives.
Absolutely. So speaking of the superhero characters and worlds that are resonating, what about your superhero series? I'm going to turn the spotlight onto you. So tell us sort of like an overview. What is your series about?
My series is almost an amalgamation of superhero and then military sci-fi with a little bit of urban fantasy mixed in. I cross genres a lot, but it seems to work out for the themes of this particular series. First and foremost, it's like about a woman's journey through finding confidence in developing superhero abilities, and just the chaos that's going on within this world where you suddenly learn about these secret societies and villains that you knew nothing about. So it's grounded in reality, but at the same time, you've got those fantastic elements to throw in there and have fun with.
Excellent. It's always a difficult balance, I think, to decide. I mean, you could go like really over the top, like sci-fi, but then it's like from my own experience as a reader, I always think like, yeah, it's kind of boring to have like stuff in the real world, but then when you actually try to write it, I feel like it's a lot harder than it looks on the surface, because just making up cities and characters and stuff, that's like the easy part. The hard part is like what happens when these heroes are, if they're not already found out, what happens when they are found out. It's like, oh boy, you really start thinking like, that's like aliens coming down. Like, how would we respond?
Well, and exactly, and that's actually part of like everybody has to get their superpowers a certain way, right? So my version of it was like alien DNA that they dissected from like Area 51, being from Nevada, or something like that, where it's been hidden, hush hush for this whole time, but now it's starting to come out in different ways. But you're absolutely right. That was the challenge of it that I found writing this. Is like I wanted to stay more based in reality with it. I didn't want to go too extreme with like not too much flying or teleportation, stuff like that. So that was the challenge, balancing those things. Where as I come towards the end of the series, I'm like, I kind of want to go back into like hardcore fantasy now, so I can just make everything up.
Yes, it's like a nice break.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what about your hero?
So go ahead. Resourcing of Los Angeles and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
They have their own aliens and crazy people out there. So.
Oh yes. So, what about your? Is it only one main hero that you have? Who are they?
The focus of the series is on a woman named Silky Butter. She starts as your average 20-year-old. She's trying to make it in the modeling industry of all things. So she goes from supermodel to superhero. I just thought that was a weird, interesting little twist. But no, she's actually not the only one who has superpowers. There's, like I said, secret societies out there that also are enhanced, I call them, with the alien technology. Sophie herself is one of the only ones who was actually born of these enhanced, so her powers are a little bit stronger because they're what I call pure blood. The others have been injected with this alien DNA, and they're getting like different kinds of powers from this serum. And so throughout the series, you're meeting all these different kinds of characters, and that was fun to explore because then I got to create these different powers that they would each develop.
Oh yes. So, if you're injected with these things, do these people sign up, or is it like a nefarious test that they're running to see what the results are?
always nefarious, isn't it? I had a little bit of A and a little bit of B. We had some. It's a military conspiracy experimentation, so we had some military elements in it, but then also we've got the bad guys who have actually stolen this formula to create their own brand of super villains.
That's that's just the way I feel like, because if it's like the ultimate power. You not only could you get powers for yourself, but then you can also make minions. I feel like that would be like one of the first things that you'll do when you're like, yep, I can give these people these formulas, and then I'm gonna make them work for me. It's gonna be great.
Okay, exactly.
So these villains, are there any like main like figurehead villains in your series?
Yes, there's actually a whole faction of them, and I really love writing villains for some reason. I guess it's just the freedom of letting them, they can do whatever they want with no moral obligations. My villains are called the Sin Squad, and each of them have a code name based on the 7 deadly sins. So what I wanted to do with them is their powers actually match the sin of which they are named. So, for instance, Lust has pheromone manipulation. Greed, or avarice, as I call her, is a power absorber, because she's greedy. And just on down the line, I had to come up with these little interesting tidbits that would match their namesake. But they've been fun to write.
So how did you settle it? I feel like there's been a lot of inspiration for names in people I've talked with. How did you come up with that as an inspiration for the various flavors of villains you were going to do?
I think part of it came from Kill Bill and the Deadly Vipers. I had an idea similar to that, and then Tarantino came out with that idea. I was like, damn it, well, now I got to do something different. So originally it was the Deadly Sin Squad, and I was like, that's too long. Let's just call it the Sin Squad. So it was similar to that.
That's awesome. That's like the fun part of the freedom of being a writer is you can take something, even when it's like sort of based on something that you've seen, it's like there's always a way to spin it and twist it and be like, yes, I'm gonna add my take on it. That's
the fun of it, yeah, absolutely. I don't even know if there's any original ideas anymore, but it's the author's way to spin, their journey onto what they're writing about. It's like you said, the flavors of it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's been something that I've noticed a lot, which is there's a lot of talk with like formulas and like how to plot and how to do all this stuff. And a lot of like newer writers, and I certainly get like sucked in, where you're like, oh man, it does seem very simple when you start out, because I mean, you can follow a structure, but like really it is like your own little nuances, and I mean that give it the original portion of it. It's like, yeah, I mean, Tarantino did it, but I'm sure he would not be able to do it the way that you would do it, and like vice versa.
Well, exactly, and I had a question the other day of teenage writers wanting to know what they should do, just starting out in their careers. And my first bit of advice is always just be true to your own voice. Too many times people try to emulate another author, or like you were saying, they get so trapped within these rules that everybody's putting out. With the rules of writing, rules are meant to be broken. Learn them, learn the facets of whatever genre you're trying to write in, but then don't be so boxed in with it. You know what I mean? Because that stifles creativity, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For anybody listening who is aspiring to do writing, definitely take that advice, because yeah, you do need to learn sort of like the basics, like in any sort of art. I mean, if you're going to paint, you got to learn how to put the paint on the canvas. But like once you know how to do it, it's up to you. Same thing for writing. Once you know how to put sentences together into a paragraph, I mean, it's yours. Go do what you want with it.
Exactly. And that just comes with time and repetition. Like, again, it goes back to weight training. It's all repetition and finding out what works for you to get the results that you want.
So I have a question, because you brought up weight training. So some people, I guess, don't don't believe that creativity is like a muscle. Are you of the opinion that through repetition and sort of like mental strength training that you can like condition your brain into like flipping on the creative switch easier?
Absolutely. I mean, it would be based in like just it's routine and habit. Like, more often than not, people don't want to work out, but they have it ingrained in themselves, myself included, that I have to get this done today. And then once it's done, you feel so much better about it. So it's the same thing with writing. You put in a certain amount of time and you make sure that you hit that time every day. And after so many hours put in, you have a book. So yeah, I think those two facets marry each other. And it's very similar principles like discipline, determination, but also, and I just did a blog post about this. Exhaustion can also set in. You can overtrain, and you can also the brain needs to rest sometimes too. So don't feel guilty that you took a day off to recharge your batteries, because it's absolutely necessary and it absolutely helps.
That's very relevant to my journey right now, because with novel writing month just finishing up and everybody being so quick on the like, gotta get this book out, this draft out as quick as possible. I feel like I always run into like some sort of burnout if I go nonstop. So it's nice to hear somebody saying, don't be afraid to take a break.
Well, I honestly think that, well, at least for me, because I did the same thing. I churned out like 3 books because, being how we are right now in society. But I feel like, number one, I feel a little bit rushed about it. And number two, maybe I didn't, you didn't put out your best work. And also what I'm trying to do is rein that back in and realize that it's supposed to be fun. If you lost the fun and the joy of writing, there's no sense in doing it. There's other things that can make you much more money with little effort.
Yeah. If you just want to go through the motions, there's plenty of careers where you can join the assembly line.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So remember have fun.
Absolutely. So for the world that your characters live in, you said it's sort of based on reality. Can you give us sort of like a tour of I guess if it's multiple places, but where it takes place and like what sort of locations and maybe historical events have shaped the world that your heroes and villains are fighting in?
It takes place mostly in California, but fictional pockets of it. A lot of it takes place at different headquarters. For instance, the Sin Squad has one headquarters set up. What I call the Strike Force, which is Silky's team, is got another like loft area set up. There's another facet of the government experiments called Shadow Company. They're off in their own little area. So, and then as far as the history of it, that all formulated, that's all just created up here in this crazy brain. Like I said, that alien ship that crash landed and they harvested the DNA from it, and then everything started to spiral from there.
Coolness. So with where you're physically located, how much has the like folklore and like legends of like extraterrestrials in our like popular consciousness, how much has that shaped your work, that your superhero lore, I guess?
It's honestly just a facet of it, just so I can explain how this all started, how these powers came to be in the world, rather than, like radiation or spider bite or something like that. That's how my powers for these people developed, was basically laboratory experiments. And then they spiraled out of control. And then, like I said, you've got people who are experimented on breeding, and then they have a child, and then the child is like super powerful. I guess it could be closely related to Firestarter by Stephen King.
Oh, yes.
No infringement. I did my own, completely my own thing, but yeah, it's all shaped from this one incident, and then everything goes from there.
It's also like one of the terrifying things about having a kid is not knowing what sort of abilities they're going to have, and then also the kid not knowing what kind of crazy abilities they're going to have, and if they can rein them in, or if it's going to just be like, well, this is destruction.
Yeah, exactly. And then I went one further, and I had her father put a block on her power, so she doesn't really even know anything's going on until her early 20s.
Yeah, you got no screen time until I allow you to have the television. I like that concept. That's good. Let me see if we go through my list of questions here. I go off the rails if I don't have my list. So, what are some of the things that you drew inspiration from as you sort of mentioned Dean Koontz. I don't know if he had any real influence on this series in particular, but do you want to talk a little bit about what you drew from to sort of like take bits and pieces that you enjoy and then mash them together?
Right. Like I said, because I wanted it to be more grounded in reality, I drew a lot from, I don't know if anyone remembers out there, a TV show called Mutant X. It was on for maybe 6 seasons or so, but it was very, it was X-Men-like, but not to the degree that X-Men was. Because it was more exactly what I'm talking about. These people have these powers, and they're just not, introducing themselves into society, but they're trying to still keep it a secret and that's the one of the big themes of my story is when people don't understand the things that they're looking at, they like to grab it and dissect it, and because they're afraid of it. So one of the big things for my heroes is like, you got to keep quiet about these powers. I know you're excited about having them, but you got to keep it quiet before something really bad happens. So that was one thing. And then when I was writing the second part, Cobra, which there was a big span of time in between the first one and the second one, so I kind of lost the flow of it. And I actually found it again by rewatching a show called Smallville, which I'm sure most fans love.
Yes, I love it.
I don't remember what episode that it was, but something suddenly like clicked in my head, and I was like, "Oh, that's where we're going with this." So yeah, so television helped.
I love using TV as a source of inspiration because there's just so much of it, and the stories are so long and intricate. I mean, you have like, for a show like Smallville, you have stories for each episode, but then you also have like an overall sort of arc for each season. And I'm always fascinated by, like, you think an episode is done and you're like, okay, that was great. And then at the last possible second, like, Mr. Luther comes walking in and is like, oh, do we have the vials? And then someone wheels out a thing of vials and you're like, what? Kryptonite vials? Where did they get this? And it's like, you have to find out next time. And I always am tempted to be like, I love that sort of cliffhanger stuff. And it's like, I try to use that in my things whenever I can.
Yeah, a lot of television has great writing. And as a caveat, side note, I met John Glover once. He was doing a film with a friend of mine. He's just like that in real life. A bit intimidating.
Oh yes. Well, I not to talk too much about Smallville because I love that show so much. I was watching because of all the COVID and lockdowns, all of the digital like Comic-Cons and panels.
Oh yeah.
And they had done like they did one with like part of the cast from Smallville being like, we're gonna remember like working together on certain seasons, and I was really interested to hear some of the stories they had to say. And what was it, Michael Rosenbaum, who plays Lex, was like, yeah, John Glover, you never know what you're getting into in a scene with him because he'll do something totally random that he didn't even tell you was going to happen. And then it gets this gut reaction from you. And he's like, there, that's the reaction that I was hoping you'd do. And they're like, I feel so manipulated, but you just got a good performance out of me.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's like the unpredictability.
And that actually just happened to me. I was writing a piece. I'm currently wrapping up the fourth and final part of my series, and that happened yesterday. I was writing a scene, and then something happened. I don't want to give away what it was, but I was like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. That just changed everything. Let me go back into my outline and like move some stuff around because that's not going to work anymore.
Oh yes, that's the fun part about not rushing through a draft, I think, is you don't realize how much the stuff that's going on around you, whether it be like current events, stuff happening with your family, or like, I don't know how many times stuff has happened to my siblings where I'm like, I am jotting this down. This is a terrible thing for you, but this will be a great thing for my book. Like, so if you're somebody who's a relative or a friend of a writer, just be aware you're being watched.
Well, a friend of mine, Matthew, actually wound up in the book, but I do that a lot.
Oh my goodness. I love to name drop in my stories sometimes, where I'll pick like somebody's first name, like a good friend, and I'll just be like, I wonder if someday maybe they'll read it and they'll say something. But yet so far nobody has said anything. So I'm like, either they don't want to say something, or I'm clear. They haven't looked yet. They don't know what I've done.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've done that several times in some of my other books. My siblings have made it in, or future books. I'm sure somebody's gonna land inside there somewhere, even if it's like a twist on the name. But I know who it is.
Oh yes, it's like those initials. Yep, you'll know who you are when you see it. So all right. This next one is kind of a tricky one. So you can avoid spoilers if it is something that's spoilerific, but do you have a plot line that came to you that you particularly is your favorite, or do you have a twist that you got in like a spark of inspiration that you had to like rush immediately and like jot it down?
It would have to be the one that I'm working on right now. It's called Chaos, and I'm trying to match the name of the book with the frenetic pace that it's embodied. So it's moving along at this warp speed, but in a good way, like a really good way. And things are just happening and piling up against my hero Silky. And so her alter ego, her superhero name is Karma. So naturally, Karma's a bitch, right? So you had to have that other side come out at some point. At some point, you're going to have the two Spider-Mans facing each other, right? So maybe I just dropped a spoiler, maybe I didn't.
Just with that alone, now I'm like, oh, I do want to read that. Like, I want to know. I'm such a like speculator when I read long series. I love to reread and look for clues and like, what did they mean when they said that one line? Is that something that's going to come back? And it's always way more exciting in my head probably than the author intended. But it's just like, oh boy, I love the speculating.
Actually, I did that on purpose this time when I was doing the series. This is the first time I've done like a full outline, because I wanted to do that specifically and reward the readers who are paying attention to the thing in book one that's going to wind up in book four. Because I love doing that myself as a fan of different genres. I'm like, oh, remember when that happened way back here? I get it, you know? It's fun to talk those things.
Oh, yes. So I have a question that's not on my list for you, because you say you're wrapping up your 4 books.
Mm-hmm.
So is this the end of the universe and the characters, or do you plan to continue on, like maybe a spin-off or anything like that?
It is for now. However, I have written my villains so well that somebody, some of the readers actually requested, can you do a Sin Squad spin-off and tell us how they got their powers and came to me? And I was like, I just might. I dabbled with that a little bit. I have a free book that's out through my newsletter. Sign up. It's like the before all of the series happened. So it's like, you get a little taste of that, but I might develop that later on in the future as well.
That doesn't surprise me, because the villains, even in my own stuff, I got a random person who messaged me in between, like I just put out a sequel and I thought I put in plenty of stuff for my villain. And they were like, I really wanted a lot more of that villain. And I'm like, I thought I gave you so much, but like they love the villains. They love the characters that you're supposed to hate.
They do, and they almost love them more than my hero. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not what I was trying to do. We can't win in the end. Like, we see enough of that in reality. It's got to be, we got to have balance over here.
Yeah. Uh, but it's like there's always that thing as a fan, whether it be like movies or TV, where you're like, I really want them to kill that Joker, but at the same time, I don't want them to do it because I just don't want them to be gone. But like, I want them to be put away somewhere so they can come back.
Exactly. When I approach villains, I like to give them as much depth and purpose as you do for the heroes. I don't like people who are just bad for no reason. The best villains are the ones who think that they're in the right. Unless
Mhm.
they are the Joker, who's just insane. But even he
Oh yeah.
has like his own reasons for doing things. So those are the most well developed characters, like Kingpin and Daredevil. Not so much the comics. I always hated him in the comics, but the TV show flushed him out in a way that I was like almost saying, yeah, he's got a point. Clean up this city. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it's all about the way. I mean, just like you mentioned, I mean, the heroes and villains, there's like a fine line because it's like they both sort of can want the same thing, but it's like how you execute it is like the gray area where it's like, do you go way off in one direction or do you go in the opposite direction that's like frowned upon, but you know that it will get the job done, like whatever the cost.
Right, and that's another thing. Like the anti-heroes are kind of big now. Like I mentioned, the Punisher way back. Like he's not necessarily doing the right things, but maybe he is. Like if you walk the fine gray line, I find those characters really interesting too.
Mhm. Not 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 to talk about something totally crazy but related, but did you follow any of the Spider-Man story where they put I believe it was Doc Ock, they like swapped bodies with him and Spider-Man for like I don't know how many issues it was. It was a couple years ago. But they like totally swapped bodies and it was like, "Oh, everyone thinks that I'm Spider-Man. Now I can sort of see why like everyone loves him." And like it made the character question himself and be like, maybe I was crazy. I don't know.
That's an interesting take. I mean, you always have to have a body swap, right? That's like one of
Oh
the
yeah.
things you check off on the box when you're doing these kinds of stories. So I'm not surprised that they did that. Again, I remember Smallville did that with Clark and Lex's father, Luke Lionel. So you always have to have somewhere in there.
Oh yes. If you're living anybody out there, if you're living in the superhero world, don't touch any glowing rocks. Don't don't take questionable technology items that someone hands you. You might be in the wrong body.
Or even just sometimes they just do power swaps too. I saw that on Charm, but
Oh
just
my
don't.
gosh. Oh
Yeah.
yes. Ugh, so good. There's so many tropes and so many things that it's just like, oh, I love this genre so much.
That's why I like to write under the umbrella of fantasy. Like I do all the different subgenres of fantasy, but it's because it's so much fun. You can be telling one story one minute, like I'm telling a superhero story right now, and like the next idea that I have is like sword and sorcery and more medieval with like dragons and stuff. So you can do so many different things; it never gets old.
Oh, absolutely. Which okay, which I know I'm running to the end of my questions, but which do you find more difficult to write, the superhero stuff or the sword and sorcery? Because I also tried to dabble in sword and sorcery, and my goodness, that is so tricky to me.
Yeah, for some reason, the sword and sorcery. I think because I've just been a fan of that for so long. You can see Conan is behind me, but there it is, Conan.
Oh,
And then like Xena, and I've just been a fan of that for so long. I think I fell off of it when Game of Thrones became popular because I was like, I'm never gonna be that good. But now I'm circling back around because when the ideas come to you, at least for me, I can't shut them off to the point
mhm.
where I'm writing this fourth book and I actually had to dive into the new one because it's like in my head whispering to me and saying, you gotta write this right now. So
Oh yes.
yeah, for right now it's been flowing really, really easily. we'll see what happens when you get to that midpoint, because it's always that midpoint in the book where you're like, this is terrible.
Yeah, it's really tricky for anybody that's listening who is in the middle of their draft. I will just say from my own experience, just skip the middle if you get to that point where you think this is bad, because really, even just recently I went back and read a draft that I put away, and you always are too close to your story to really judge it in the moment. I feel like, because when I went back and I had taken like a month or two to just let it sit, I was reading it back and I was like, I don't remember writing this. And it's not bad. Like, so, but if I had gone back and started rewriting right away when I got to like the middle, which is really, it's true, it's always the hardest part. Because it's the part that can sag so easily.
Right.
But if I had gone back through and been like, oh, you know what, let's just like rework this whole thing, then I would have gotten rid of all that stuff that later on I thought, wow, you know, this is pretty good compared to where I started. So,
well, we're on worst critics, right? So when you're reading through like you said, you're like, this is really bad. But then I've had moments where I'll reread something that I wrote years ago, and I'm like, wow, I wrote that. That's pretty darn good. Pat myself on the back. But you're absolutely right. Like, I found even through writing this series, like, I didn't ever usually do this, but like jumping around chapters really helped for me to keep going, especially because I like writing fight scenes, just basically because of my background as a martial artist and so forth. Things just flow easier for me. So if I'm stuck on a scene and I know I've got an action scene next, I'm like, let me skip ahead, do that, and then I'll come back and get the exposition out of the way.
oh yes, it's like a nice bridge where I do that sometimes too for different scenes like that I know I want to write and it comes to me really quickly. It's like it's easy to fill in the gaps, and it's sometimes like more fun to fill in the gaps when you know, like, okay, like the fun parts are done, but then when you go back, it's like it's not as bad as if you just went chronologically through.
Exactly, and you never know, because you're writing one scene and you go, oh well, I can go back and lead into it by doing this in this other scene. It all comes down to editing anyway, proofreading, changing it around. I heard a great piece of advice once. It was write for the wastebasket, which essentially means your first draft is not going to be the same as it was. Just get something down on paper and don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, any sort of art, the thing that you see in the museum, you see the end result. You don't really see all of the sketches or the mock-ups or even a movie. You don't see all the like hours and hours of stuff that they like threw on the floor. I'm like, this is not good. You see like the best. And same thing for books. It's like there's no way that what you start with is like in the same league as what you end up with after you go through and fine tune.
Right, and even for like career longevity, I hate when they say overnight success, because it really it really insults all the hard work and years of pounding the pavement and putting the work in that gets you to that level. Nobody just becomes a success overnight. There's stuff trailing behind them. I don't know why they like to like cut out that stuff and like pretend that it didn't happen. Like, it would actually be a lot more helpful to people who are struggling through the same journey to hear those stories.
Absolutely. I always think whenever I see one of those things where it's like and it's usually like a really celebrated book, and then I always think in the back of my head, like, yeah, that's their first published book, but how much fan fiction did that person write online under a pen name before they did their own original thing?
Right. How many books are sitting in a drawer that they never published?
Yeah. And as somebody who used to do, I probably like you, where I used to love typewriting and seeing the stack of paper, it was like torture to go through all of those years later and be like, what do I really need to keep? Am I really going to scan all of these? Like, am I ever going to look at them again? It's like there's a lot that goes into learning, and it can be a lot, but it's like you need it. You need to just get the experience, and that's how you find your voice.
Exactly. Yeah, it goes back to finding your own voice and what your readers are going to come to know you as, and that's how you develop a following.
Absolutely. So let me see what I got. So you're still working on book 4. Well, you sort of already teased something, so I don't know if I'm going to ask you to tease more. But do you have sort of a projected timeline of when readers that have plowed through the first 3 could expect to see the 4th one?
Well, it's on pre-sale right now for the end of January, so I better be done by that.
That is that's the most horrifying thing to me. I have not done that, but I've talked to a lot of people who have done that because they work well under pressure. I don't know if I could ever do that and be like, well, my pre-order date is set. I got like 3 weeks to do this.
And I gave myself time too. I specifically skipped December because they had come out every month. I said, I'm going to do it in January. That's plenty of time. And now here we are. It's almost Christmas. And I'm like, oh boy, I better get back on that. Because you need time to let it breathe, like a fine wine before you can go in and edit it and everything else. So.
Oh yeah. Like you need at least, I feel like, a week of just not thinking about it at all before you can go in and be like, okay, let's start from the beginning and see what this is, even with outlines.
Yeah, and I've read through my books so much, I get tired of them. It starts to gloss over. Like, did I already read that? I don't remember.
Yeah, that's why for anybody who ever says like, how are there typos if you've read your book so much? That is why, because we just know it by heart at the end. And I remember reading, as a real life example, I was reading about J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series. And there was like these little tidbits about each book about like, oh, the editor commented on this. And for her 3rd book, she sent a message to her editor saying, if I have to go through this book one more time, I'm going to look so miserable when I have to read excerpts of it for the news. So please don't make me read it again.
See, even J.K. Rowling can have problems.
Yeah. So we read our stuff a lot, and sometimes things just slip through. But you could be cool and email us the typos that bothered you, and we'll fix them.
Yeah, we're human,
Yeah.
But as you mentioned it, like, please leave reviews, especially for indie authors. It means so much to us. They get our work in front of people. And also, I love hearing reader feedback. Like, I used to go to Comic-Cons and stuff, and I would set up my tables, and I would be able to have that one-on-one interaction. And we haven't been able to do that, and I miss it so much.
That has been really tough for this year because there was so much that like me and friends were planning to go see, and there were people that we were hoping to go like support, and it's just a total new world right now. So, and anything that listeners who are also fans and readers out there can do is just use the technology at your disposal and just reach out where you can, whether it be an Amazon review or something on Goodreads or a message on the blog. It's all morale boosting, and like we also just generally, like you say, like we just want to know, did you enjoy it? If you didn't enjoy it, like what can we do better? Like if you enjoyed the other ones and this one was this new one was traumatic for you, like we want to know, is it because we did something totally wrong, or is it all part of the plan to make you wait for the new plot to come out?
Exactly. Yeah, but and if you really hated it, then don't worry about it. We're good.
Yeah. The amount of things that I've hated, I don't really leave bad reviews on things for like something like entertainment, because I just feel like it's so subjective.
Right.
But like, I don't know. I love to hear people dissect stories more than like when somebody leaves a 1-star review on something that I loved. I'm always tempted, and I always go and I read it because I want to know, like, what did this person expect? And like most of the time, I'm like, the things that they listed are things that I ended up loving, but they just ended up not liking. So it's like it all comes down to taste in the end for stuff that we don't like.
Exactly. And, you know, I'll listen to reader feedback, you know, and I'll see if I'll take it with a grain of salt and see, okay, we're going into the next story. Should I or could I change that to make, you know, whatever the comment may have been? And I'll take it to heart. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. And also we will definitely catalog away when people point out specific characters that they want, you know, spin-offs of, and I will do it.
Yeah, it's in the vault. Absolutely.
Yes, you want to see more? That's like the best thing we can hear from you.
Yeah, I actually, one of the, a real quick story, when I was doing comic conventions, I had a book called Lucky Sevens that was out, and it's based in my hometown of Vegas, and it's a paranormal thriller kind of thing. And a gentleman picked it up, and then the next day he came back to my table, and he said, I started reading this last night, and I just want to tell you how good the prose is. It really sucked me in. And I was like, see, this is why I do the face-to-faces. I love, you know, it chooses me to keep writing. You know, it helps us to figure out which stories to continue on with.
Oh yeah, because really, like you mentioned earlier, there's just so many ideas that come to you, and sometimes the ones that we don't think of starting are the ones that a reader will come to us and be like, you know, I really would like more, and then you're like, that lines up exactly with what I had, and I was going to put it away, but them talking about how much they want more of a certain character or a certain plot, it like gives you the motivation to be like, oh, okay. Like it's sort of like it's the collaboration between an author and their readers. Like there's a reason why like Dean Koontz has written so many books, like not only because he's a quick writer, but just like the reception that he gets, it's like he knows he's on the right track.
Exactly. And it goes back to, you know, knowing what your audience wants and delivering that. I had a young reader once, she was talking about Demon Hunter, and she goes, you know what would be cool is if he was the demon also. And I was like, you got it. So then I spun that off. I spun it off into Demon Huntress, and it wound up that the Demon Hunter's daughter was now part demon herself. So she had this conflict with having to chase down these demons and kill them because she was one of them.
I love the twists. I love
twists.
It's like it's like the book version of like a mid-season like cliffhanger, except you don't have to wait like the 2 months for the rest of the season to come out. It's like it's the next page. Then the next morning you wake up and you're like, I shouldn't have stayed up that late reading that, but I totally did.
That's just how it finished. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So your series is a single series, but so I would assume the readers start at book 1.
Yes, but I also made it so that you can jump in wherever you want. I made it so that you didn't necessarily need to know what was going on in the first one. I know readers like to be able to do that, but if you start at book 1, which is Karma, it's a better experience. That's all I'm going to say. Plus, I mean, you don't have to wait anymore. 1, 2, and 3 are out right now.
So go get them.
I'll also mention book 1 because it's the series starter, Karma. I have it at 99 cents on Kindle. Or if you're in Kindle Unlimited, just grab it up.
You have nothing stopping you. I love the Kindle Unlimited because I end up, it's like for anybody who is not part of it, I do recommend it because it's sort of like it basically is the Netflix for books, but they give you like, oh, you can borrow 10 at a time. And when you first sign up, like I thought that's such a huge amount. Like I'm never gonna have 10 books at once. Within like 3 days, I had 10 books at once, and I was just like jumping around to all of them. So, and there's tons of indie authors, especially in the superhero realm, who have like majority of their books in there. So if you're somebody who is a voracious reader, I would say do it. And definitely you get paid for if somebody completes the book. So you have nothing stopping you. I highly recommend it.
it gets eyes on your story, because a lot of times people are hesitant to jump on a new author. So it kind of takes out that barrier, it's not really a big risk.
Yeah, and it's literally as quick. There are people that I know, like in my circle of friends, who they will read a book a night, and it's like you'd be crazy to not be like, yep, well, I can read like 30 books by the time my 1 month is done. And so
my mom used to be able to do that. I'm a slow reader. I'm a slow reader. I'm a slow writer. I can't, I guess my brain doesn't function that way.
Yeah, I am similar, because I've had family members who are like, do you ever actually finish reading any of the books that you have on your bookshelves? And I'm like, yeah, it might take me, like 3 months, but like they get finished. Don't worry.
Oh, the TBR stack is lined up, and I just found another new book in the secondhand shop that I was like, wait a minute, I never heard of this author. I need to see this. And it's like 600 pages long, so that's going to take me a minute.
Oh yeah, but it's also sort of comforting to have a book of that length and be like, I'm just starting. If it's really good, this would be a great journey.
If it's not really good, I'm not going to finish.
Yeah, it was 50 cents, so I won't cry. So I will literally talk forever. So if I added this question, I'm pretty sure I had it on the list that I sent you, but is there anything that I have not asked you or touched upon that you want to sort of put out there into the world?
I was just going to say, being in the superhero theme of the show, I wrote my very first self-help book last year, and it's based in the superhero realm. It's called Be Your Own Superhero. What I did was, it's kind of a fun way it's kind of a fun personal growth book. I used elements from comics and TV shows in the superhero realm that you could actually adapt and use for your own life. So like super speed would be, how to engage with your day-to-day activities in a faster, more productive way. And super strength is basically like inner courage to do the things that you always love to do. So just wanted to put that out there.
That's cool. That makes me think of in college, I found a book for people that didn't want to read their philosophy books, and it was called Superheroes and Philosophy, where it was kind of like same thing, where it was like, oh, it takes these like big concepts and like puts them through the lens of the superheroes. So I like the idea of your self-help book.
Yeah, I wanted to try to delve into that a little bit more, and using like my fitness background also, just to merge those two things together. And I'm experimenting with putting out a couple more of those as the years go by. But, again, I've got so many ideas.
Oh yes, and anything for, especially now when we're sort of like stuck in our own little spaces for the time being, like anything to be more active or like have somebody sort of like cheering you on, even in like a self-help book. I mean, I feel like that would be very useful. So I'm totally probably going to check that out.
Exactly. I know, going into the new year that like we are, I just put it on Kindle. It was only in paperback before, but I decided, this might be a great gift, or even a gift for yourself, to go into the new year super powered, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So anybody listening, I encourage you, please go check out some stuff. But before I wrap it up, where can readers find your books? I know that on Amazon, but if there are other places, and also if you want to be found on the internet by readers, where can they find you?
A boyfriend of mine once said that I'm the easiest person to find on the internet. So I am on Amazon, my books. I'm also on barnesandnoble.com. You can go to my personal website, cynthiavespia.com. They're all set up there as well. I only have Instagram and a Facebook page right now for social media, but feel free to reach out. I'm always open to answering questions within reason. But yeah, just hit me up on there. My handle is Original Sin Writes. CYN.
Ooh. Love it.
Also, check out the newsletter. Check out the newsletter. I've got that free compendium to Sophie's Strike Force. It's a good read.
So for all the listeners out there, you know where to go. You should definitely sign up because I'm a huge fan of newsletters and books because that's the best way to keep up with your favorite indie writers. So you have your marching orders, people. Go find the books, go read them, go leave reviews.
Absolutely. If you want to just break that down into one place to go, just go to my website. Everything is set up there, right on the front page, so it's easy to find. And I try to keep my newsletter fun and entertaining and engaging, so it's not just buy my books. It's a little bit interesting stuff that goes on within this crazy mind. So.
Oh yes. Excellent. So there we have it, everybody. I just want to thank you, Cynthia, for being on the show. It was seriously an absolute blast chatting.
Thanks for having me. Actually, I had a lot of fun. You know, writing's a very isolating career, so anytime we can reach out, especially with people in the industry, it's awesome.
Oh my goodness, yes, I agree. I was looking forward to this interview pretty much all day, so it was excellent and fun. So for everybody out there, I will wrap this episode up for you. If you like the podcast, whether you listen to it on iTunes or YouTube, like, subscribe, comment if you're able. If you talk about spoilers, especially with a new book on the horizon, just please leave a spoiler tag so we can skip by if we haven't read. And yeah, as always, just want to thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all, whether you are new or old to the podcast, and I will see you all next time.